Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Follow the Tours podcast. And today we have a new topic, kind of a fun one. And I want to welcome a guest from Scotland. His name is Mark Milne. Mark, you out there?
Sorry, Karen. Yes. Hi there,
Okay,
Karen. Yes, I am here. Sorry. Thank you.
that's all right. Great. So, welcome. And for those listening today, we're going to talk about short format tennis, kind of the whys and whats. And while we don't see it as a full replacement in professional tennis, it does have some applications and what we believe are benefits that might serve some needs that aren't addressed right now. So Mark is founder of one of the short formats, 3030, and we'll have him speak to that a little bit later. But to start off, we just wanted to discuss what we see as some of the real value add of a shorter format versus the best of three or best of five traditional sets that we have today. So, Mark, when you and I spoke the other day, we talked a bit about wear and tear on the body for the athletes. And one of the areas that came up was actually qualifying. We know that for a number of players that qualify, by the time they win qualies and make their way into the main draw of an event, they've already played a number of matches. And so in a real sense, it's almost a little, shall I say, unfair that they're stepping into the main draw with probably a level of fatigue, possibly even exhaustion that the rest of the draw doesn't have. So what is your thought on that? Do you see value in that, a place for it?
Yeah, I do actually, Karen. I do think shorter formats do have a place. And yeah, I'm not too experienced on what happens in the qualifying and so on. But yeah, I can imagine if a player goes through three or four matches to qualify, he is at a fair disadvantage or she is at a fair disadvantage before the event starts. So having less physically demanding matches could be a good option during qualifying. So it takes less out of the player. It still has to be a fair test. I'm not just looking for a shorter format that's over too quickly that gives a bit of luck to a certain player. It still has to be long enough to provide a fair test. But no, I think that's a fair option that, yeah, during qualifying, yeah, you could possibly use you could even bring in sort of round robin so that players have more matches against each other, shorter matches, but they maybe play three round robin matches and so on as part of the qualifying, which could open things up a bit rather than just getting knocked out in the first round of
Right,
qualifying. Qualifying could maybe have round robin.
right. And the other thing to think about is the fan benefit to this, right? We still have people coming to these first round matches being televised, etc. So potentially the quality of that first round match with the number of qualifiers would also benefit in terms of the physical state of the opponent being on more level ground and just a better quality match because the player's not exhausted. So could make first rounds more exciting and better for fans to see. So
Yeah,
moving on, we talked about exposure to fans of a number of different players as well. Because when we've got a short format tennis and the matches can go more quickly, let's just say versus a typical day, if you buy a main stadium ticket, you're probably going to see two morning session matches. And then if you stay for the evening, you're going to see two at night. So a total of four should you choose to stay all day. If you're only coming for one session, you're probably seeing two matches and a maximum of four players. So with a shorter format, perhaps there could be eight matches in a single day that a fan might see. And then we're opening it up for exposure to 16 players, which can add a level of excitement and, again, a greater level of exposure to people that might not see certain players. So that was definitely something we talked about. Now, you just mentioned opens up round robin. So give me your view on round robin matches versus single elimination.
yeah. the beauty of the round robin is that a player is then guaranteed not just to play one match. If it's a group of four and he plays everyone in that group, he will be, or he or she, I keep saying he, but it's he or she will be guaranteed at least three matches, which I think is a benefit. Especially, I'm speaking about shorter formats, not just at the professional level, but all round junior events and so on, rather than turning up, getting beaten in the first round, possibly playing a consolation event. Let's get a round robin event where you have multiple groups, much more matches. It gives players more experience of playing against different types of player, which I think is a good thing as well. And if you work out the round robin format, it could work out pretty well, basically. So yeah, they obviously use it at the ATP end of tour event. It's been held in London the last 5 years, and they have two groups of four. I'm not convinced it works tremendously well because the top two in each group go through to a semi-final and a final. Sometimes the final group matches maybe don't mean much, and it could be done better. I'm actually just watching the European Championship football just now, and they've done quite a good thing that they have 6 groups of 4. The top 2 teams qualify for the knockout, but the best 4 teams that finish third get through to the knockout as well. And it makes the final group games actually more exciting. It's played right up till the end.
Okay, so let me stop you here for a moment.
Yeah.
You brought up a point a few minutes ago that I think is extremely important, and that is utilizing a round robin format for junior level tennis, because really the goal there is to give them competition so that they gain experience. And I've witnessed firsthand working some events here in San Diego where a parent drives their kid an hour, 2 hours or more, possibly even stays in a hotel room overnight to bring their kid to a match, and then the kid loses the first match and they're done for the day. And the parent has paid entry for that child into the event, the expense of traveling there, and potentially the expense of hotel rooms, restaurants, etc. That is really a poor experience for not only the kid but the parent. And I've seen the frustration in the parents of, we just wasted a whole day. And the importance is that it's a positive outcome, that the child has some fun, hopefully, and that they gain experience. So I think that's a brilliant aspect that you brought up, that really shouldn't junior events be more round robin, and maybe they ought to be more short format, because it would give the child an opportunity to play against more of a variety of players. Because oftentimes too, I've seen a real mismatch between, I've seen a kid barely 3 feet tall playing against a kid who's 5 feet in the first round, and unfortunately we're probably going to know what's going to happen with that match. And that's going to leave that kid with not such a great memory of competing that day. So let's move on from that. Sticking with children, we know kids don't have quite the same attention span. I've sat in stadiums where I've watched parents bring children down into the lower, bowl of some of these stadiums. And the kid's trying to get up in the middle of matches, and the ushers are coming down and basically scolding them if the parents aren't already doing that. Again, not a great experience for a child, because you want them to love the game. If they go to watch a match and basically they're just getting reprimanded for the vast majority of the time, it's not a lot of fun. We want to open up access to tennis for children. We want to grow tennis, and giving them a great experience in viewing and participating early on is going to help with that. So now you mentioned also senior tour champions. So speak to that for a moment, and where short format tennis might help.
Yeah, I think shorter format tournament events can be held at all levels of tennis. But yeah, I did pick out in particular the seniors, basically, when you're getting a bit older, to play maybe 1, 2, 3 matches in a day using traditional scoring. It certainly gets a bit harder, speaking from experience. So yeah, I think the opportunity to play shorter formats you could play maybe 3 matches in a day. You're playing 3 different opponents, and as I've said, yeah, you can use a round robin event. So you're gaining more. You're getting more experience. And you're able to complete 3 matches in a day, basically, if they're of a shorter format. So yeah, one aspect is the seniors. I watched. Well, I'm aware of the Champions Tour. Obviously, the ex-professional players like McEnroe and so on all play in. The format they play at the moment is a one tie-break set to 7-6, basically. And it just seems a bit strange having a match that's just one set. It's obviously shorter, but I think there are better options. And as I'll explain later on, the 30-30 format is possibly a better option, worth trying anyway, rather than just playing a single tiebreak set using
Okay.
traditional tennis scoring.
Makes sense. Yeah, and I would bet McEnroe might be more interested in, again, playing the shorter format, as maybe a number of other retired players might come back and be willing to do that. So there's one key point that I think is brilliant, and Labor Cup already does this. Right now, when you attend a traditional tennis event, probably you go for a couple of days because most fans cannot afford to take off a week or 2 weeks in order to see an event start to finish. And there's huge excitement in being able to see soup to nuts, the first match, all the way to a final and the trophy ceremony and participating in that. Laver Cup does that with the team tennis format. And if we had events that ran entirely on short format, you would have the ability to potentially run an event in maybe 1 to 3 days or 1 to 4 days, which would give fans more of an ability to see it all. Give me your perspective on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. The Laver Cup's fantastic. It's played out over 3 days. So, yeah, a fan can buy tickets for the 3 days and attend all the sessions, see all the matches, and you see it from the start right through to the conclusion. So, yeah, using a shorter format, I could see an event that is run over 3 days, and a fan could be there from start to finish and see all the players basically playing. The shorter matches means you can fit in more matches, so you're going to get the opportunity to see more players, which I think would be fantastic. Rather than just seeing 4 players in a session, yeah, you're going to see at least double that. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're going to shortchange the fans by having shorter formats." That's not the case. You're still going to be seeing the same length of time of tennis, but you're going to see twice as many matches, twice as many players, basically. So it helps all round. Even the players, they won't have to pay for an accommodation for the whole week. The fans don't have to pay for accommodation for all week. It's over a long weekend, basically, an event that can be run from start to finish. You
Right.
see the trophy being presented at the end, and the shorter format opens that up, that it can be done. It's not possible to do that just now easily with the full traditional scoring.
Right. So there's one other group we're not even thinking about here, and I know for a fact the tournament directors. We know the enemy of live tennis and tournaments is rain. And when you have to get in best of three, best of five set matches, and it's rain for 2 to 3 days, that really becomes a major scheduling challenge. It can create some unfair match scheduling situations for players. I was in Eastbourne at one point when I saw, I believe it was Svetlana Kuznetsova and Caroline Wozniacki had to play 3 matches in one day just to catch up the schedule because of the rain delays. So, for tournament directors, that might actually be a gift. So speaking with WTA and ATP, and now I just want to say the PTPA Tour, or association, I should say. There's a beauty in having events that are combined, the ATP and the WTA. So many players are fans of both, and yet we know, other than the majors and most of the 1,000 level events, there aren't as many combined events where you can see men and women. And for me, that's a real plus when you're able to see that, because the style of play is different, just personalities and the ability to mix it up, as well as the ability of mixed doubles, which I find to be quite a an interesting and fun set of tennis to be watched. So then let's move on to one more point, and that is certainly wear and tear on the body. Fewer surgeries, players not playing in an exhausted state such that they're more vulnerable to problems that could in fact damage their career and or possibly end the career if the injury is serious enough. So give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Tennis at the very top level has become so physically demanding. The players are having to put in so much work before they even enter the match court to become fit enough. And that obviously does put a lot of strain and so on the body. And who knows how these players will fare in years to come after having to push their bodies as hard as they do. So having an alternative shorter format that is less physically demanding, I think provides the players with a choice. You can decide maybe that it's a bit like athletics. You have 100 metres, 200 metres that are sprint events. You have middle distance events. You have long distance events. These athletes are all different types of athlete, and they select what kind of activity they want to do. Tennis could have a shorter format where certain players, they maybe aren't as fit, they're not as strong and so on, would like to just play shorter formats where a match could be over in an hour and a half maximum. Whereas at the moment, there are only a handful of players at the very top, certainly in the men's game, that are capable of winning best of 5 sets matches, 7 of them over a fortnight. So it opens up just a choice for the players. They can mix it. One week they could play full traditional scoring, and then they're maybe needing a bit of a rest, and they decide to enter an event that has just shorter formats. They know that they're not going to it's not going to be as physically demanding on their body and so on. It gives them a bit more of a break, a bit of a rest. You did mention that the clay court season on the likes of Nadal is absolutely brutal. 4 or 5 events back to back on the clay, accumulating in the French Open. By the end of these 4 or 5 weeks, most mere mortals would be absolutely shot dead. So having an option of having alternative formats that are shorter events could open things up. And you did hit on a point there that it opens up the opportunity of having men and women at the same event. Because the matches are shorter, you could fit in more matches. So the court time allows you to have men and women, and they may be more willing to play in the doubles and the mixed doubles as well. If they know that they're not having to kill themselves playing a singles best of 5 sets match, that they know they're just playing a short format match, they could play a lot more doubles, because I think tennis lacks that now.
For sure, and doubles is a whole nother topic. So I want to bring in one other point that you just made me think about. We just had Federer return after surgeries and after a period of rehab, but not really having the ability to fully test his body for competitive match play. And some people were upset that he came into the French Open and he played to a certain point and that said, hey, I'm listening to my body, and I think right now the best thing for me is to bow out. Look, the guy has given the vast majority of his life to playing professional tennis. I think a lot of people say he's earned it. He has the right. And also, and this is another topic I will speak to at some point, tennis players are independent contractors. And as such, they have the right to pick and choose and the ability to choose to run what is truly their small business the way they see fit. So should a player be forced to play with an injury, they could actually sustain an injury that could end their career, hence their ability to earn an income. And that goes against the whole tenet of being an independent contractor and having control over your business and making decisions that are in the best interests of your business. To add on to that, could it have been helpful for Roger to have the opportunity to enter a short format tennis event to test his match readiness post-injury and play all the way through because he isn't playing best of five. And therefore, it's a way to ease back into the game after an injury, after a period of recovery, to be able to truly test, not bow out in the middle of a draw, which made some folks unhappy and probably even some fans that were hoping to see him in later rounds. And it just fills a need and fills a niche that is really there that is not available right now. So now I'm going to move into talking about some of the different formats, because you have one of them, but I'm going to go through some of the other ones first. We have TieBreakTens, and that was first introduced at Royal Albert Hall in 2015. And in fact, Kyle Edmund defeated Andy Murray in that match. We've now also seen it played in Vienna, Madrid, Melbourne, and New York. And some of the aspects of TieBreakTens is they are tiebreak only matches, and it is the first player to 10 points with the 2-point margin. There's no real games or sets. Most of the other rules of tennis remain. And we have seen this played in the ATP and WTA tours in lieu of a third set, at least this aspect of it, with the 10-point tiebreaker. And of course, that's doubles pretty much all the time. So the next one is Fast 4 Tennis, and that was created with Tennis Australia. And it really has quite a variety of non-traditional tennis rules. The ITF has used it with Hopman Cup and ATP Next Gen tournaments. And as you mentioned, it's similar, for those that are cricket fans, to cricket's 2020 format. It has no lets in serve. There's a deciding point, a sudden death at deuce or 40-40. Sets are won when players reach 4 games with a 2-game lead. And there's a tiebreak when the set scores at 3 games all. And then the set tiebreak is the first player to win 5 points with kind of a sudden death deciding point at 4 all. So, Mark, have you seen this format, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm obviously very aware of both TieBreakTens and Fast 4. And yeah, what you've said is spot on. The TieBreakTens is a single tiebreak to 10 points, over very, very quickly. It's over in about 10 minutes, basically, quite short. And then, yeah, Fast 4 sets to 4 games and so on. I think it deviates a bit from tennis. The tennis has always been you get to 6 games as a tiebreak at 6 all. The other thing in Fast 4 you mentioned was the sudden death point at deuce. I just don't think that's the best way to finish a hard-fought game. The deuce games that go deuce add and so on are sometimes the better games. It's a real battle sometimes. It sometimes turns out to be a turning point during a set. So playing the sudden death point at deuce, I don't think it's great. It's been used in ATP, WTA doubles for many years. I have witnessed it personally, and I think it just produces a bit of an anticlimax. So yeah, Fast 4's out there. It is part of the ITF rules now. It's been trialled at the ATP Next Gen event in Milan for the best 21 and under male players. And they are continuing to try it, and it's used in this country, in the UK, in many tournaments. I personally am not a big fan of playing sets to 4 games. I just think there are better options for producing shorter matches.
Okay. So speaking of the UK and the Lawn Tennis Association, they also have something called Fast 4, which is actually different than the Australian version of Fast 4. So in this case, the no-let rule is dropped. The traditional set tiebreak is used, so the first to 7 points with a 2-point margin. There's a traditional match tiebreak for the third set, and this is that to 10 points with a 2-point margin. And it keeps, there's a sudden death deuce, and a set is won if the player wins 4 games, again with a 2-game lead, and a set tiebreak at 3 all. For me, I started thinking, okay, we have Australian rules fast four, we have UK rules fast four. Part of my concern, and I know you want to try out these different formats, but it also can be confusing to fans. And if there aren't this many matches with these formats, even understanding what's happening while you're watching might be a little bit of a challenge for people that don't know all the rules or used to the traditional scoring format of tennis. And so kind of keeping up with what is actually happening. Wait, how did they just win that set or game or match? So I think it's interesting that we're
Yeah.
seeing kind of a split between two different organizations, Tennis Australia and the LTA, and not being able to align in the way that they call this fast four tennis in being the same or different.
Yeah, the UK have modified Tennis Australia's fast four by, they've removed the no-let rule, which I think is a no-brainer anyway. The no-let rule, to save time during a match, how many lets do you actually serve in a match to save time? And it also produced quite a bit of luck. I've heard of matches being at match point, someone serves and it dribbles over and that's the match over. I've actually seen it happen on television as well. The no let is not a good idea, basically. And yeah, they've tweaked. It's been based on feedback. When they first started using it in the UK, they used the Fast Four Tennis Australia rules. But after feedback from various people, they've tweaked it a bit, removed the no-let, and they've changed the tie breaks, basically. But you're still basically playing a match that you could potentially win, say, 4-2, 4-1. It just doesn't feel right to me. It goes against the grain of what traditional tennis has been. I don't like hearing a kid coming back from a tournament saying they got beaten 4-1, 4-3. It's not a proper match in my eyes, basically. But yeah, the UK have tweaked it a wee bit. So I think the ATP Next Gen have tweaked it a bit as well. There are a few slight differences, but in essence, sets to 4 games, tie break 3-all, and the no ad point. They played a sudden death point. I just don't think it's the best way of playing shorter matches. Kids
All right,
play.
So I'm going to have, for time's sake, because we have a limit today, I'm going to move to probably the newest kid on the block and perhaps the most creative of the various formats. And this is called the Ultimate Tennis Showdown, and it premiered at Patrick Maragatelou's Academy in southern France. And it is very different than traditional format rules. Matches have kind of a different scoring system. It has a 15-second shot clock for serves. Coaching is allowed once per set. There's an aspect called power cards where a player can play their card and really do things like taking away the opponent's second serve at a certain point in the match. So the player sort of gets to strategically think about where they are, where the match is going, and possibly play these cards at key points in the match. So it's kind of interesting. They don't enforce a code of conduct, which is kind of interesting. And then there's a round robin rather than a single elimination format as well. Now, have you seen that one at all?
Yeah, I've kept a close eye on it. Yeah, Patrick Mouratoglou has obviously seen that tennis matches are lasting too long. The younger generation just are not engaging. So he has created, UTS. He's now held 4 events. What you failed to say was that the main aspect of UTS is that it's timed. They play 4 quarters. The first 3 events he held were 4 quarters each of 10 minutes. And if it went to 2 quarters all, they played a very sudden death, first person to win 2 points in a row. In the 4th edition, he reduced the length to 4 quarters of 8 minutes. The reason he did that was because he wanted to try out only having 1 serve. So in UTS 4, the players only had 1 serve. He wanted to try that out. But yeah, it's a timed format. They play point for point, tie-break like scoring in each quarter. You win a quarter. The person who wins the most quarters wins the match, basically. It's very, very different. You're not seeing service games, hold and service games break. You're not seeing typical games, basically. You're not seeing sets. He's playing timed quarters, basically. It's very, very different. But strangely enough, it was quite engaging. But again, I do think it could be better. I was often finding towards the end of a quarter, if someone was leading by more than 2 or 3 points going into the last minute, the last few points meant nothing. You saw players just hitting the ball out into the stands and so on. I don't like seeing that. Every point has to count in tennis, and that wasn't happening towards the end of some of the quarters, which made it a bit of an anticlimax. The end of a set is a big point. The person who wins it is going to win that set. That didn't particularly happen when you're playing time tennis, just counting points, because one player could be more than a few points ahead, knows quite easily that going into the last minute, there's only going to be another 3 or 4 points, so the other person cannot possibly catch him. So it was a bit of an anticlimax, but it's good to see him trying something new. Tennis does need something to attract the younger generation. So yeah, absolutely, UTS, I think it's a great idea, but it could be done better. But
well,
fine.
I think everything can probably be done better, but we'll leave that. Now let's roll over into your format, 30-30. And again, given time, I know you want to tell us everything about it, but what are the main highlights? What have you done with it so far? What have you seen in terms of feedback, etc.? So I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Karen. Yeah. So first of all, yeah, 30-30 tennis. It's very simple. That's the first thing I tell people. It's something that's very, very simple. Everything is identical to traditional tennis, except the one main rule change in the scoring. Instead of every game starting at love all, every game will start at 30 all. Now, that brings me to the naming of it. If you write down 30 all as 30-30 and you read that, it reads 30-30, hence the branding of 30-30. It's written like cricket's 20-20, which is the first 20 is in letters, the second 20 is in digits. 30-30 is the same, and it can also be abbreviated to T30 as T20 is in cricket. So that's the main scoring change. Very simple. Every game starts at 30 all. This is nothing new. It has been used during practice and training for many, many years to give players more opportunity of playing the big points around about 30 all in juice and so on. So that's the main rule. There are 3 other small tweaks, not to the scoring, but just to the process, basically. Obviously, when you start the game at 30 all, you will get some games that are over in 2 points. A player may hit 2 big serves, game over, it's done in less than 30 seconds. When the games go past very quickly, the normal change of ends rule doesn't work too well because you're changing ends too often, too quickly. So instead of changing after the first game and then every 2 games, I've doubled that up for 30-30. You will actually play 2 games, change ends. You will then play 4 games, change ends, play another 4 games, change ends, and so on. So during a set, you change ends after 2, 6, and 10 games. And what that does is it cuts down the number of change of ends during a set by a factor of 2, which again speed things up. So there's a small tweak to the change of ends. At 6 all, rather than using the tie break that goes to 7 points, sometimes that can go on a bit too long. I wanted the tie break to be concise at 6 games all. So again, like Fast 4 or Tennis Australia's Fast 4, a 9-point tie break is played. And that's the first player to get to 5 points. If it goes to 4 all, there is a sudden death point, and you win the tie break by 5-4 and the set by 7-6. That is actually called a short set tie break. It's in the ITF rules in Appendix 5, a short set tie break. The 9-point tie break is played at 6 games all. And lastly, an optional one, I like the idea of players alternating who serves first at the start of each set. So if player A serves first in set 1, player B will serve first in set 2, and player A will serve first in set 3. Because the sets are shorter, they only last about 20 minutes. It's quite nice that each player gets an opportunity to serve first in each set. I've always thought that traditional tennis, if a player wins a set 6-love or 6-2 or 6-4 or 7-5, they will serve first again in the next set. There's more opportunities than there is for players for it to change, basically. So that's an optional rule. It's worth trying. I don't think it changes much, but I think it makes things a bit fairer. You can see it. You can sometimes get a best of 5 sets match where the same player actually serves first in every single set. I just like to keep it fair. You alternate who serves first at the start of each set. So, yeah, that's your main rules. As I've said, 20 minutes for a set. So a best of 3 sets can be played in between 40 and 60 minutes. Now, that's great for club players who are looking to maybe book a court for 1 hour. It ensures you can play a best of 3 sets match in the 1 hour. If the professionals were to potentially take it up, it could be quite interesting, say, seeing the top women playing a best of 5 sets using the 30-30 format. It would be best of 5 sets. It still feels like traditional tennis. The match result looks identical, and so on. So what I'm telling people is that 30-30 tennis maintains the DNA of traditional tennis. You still see service games, holds and breaks. You still see the 6-game set with a tie-break at 6-all, and you still see all the juice add points. They're the most important. That's the DNA of tennis.
So, Mark, I'm going to stop you real here because we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon.
Yeah.
But you've talked a little bit about where 30-30 is being played, and you said more at the club level right now. So tell me about what people are saying, what you're seeing. What kind of feedback are you getting?
Yeah, it's been an ongoing project of mine for 3-4 years. And yeah, I rolled it out just via social media, asking people to play it. And I now have almost 300 testimonials on the 30-30 website. And the feedback has been very, very good. But as you say, yeah, just at club players, I've had players just using it themselves, using it as part of training. I've also had club players organise competitions, and they've all thought it was a really good idea. It just becomes more immersive. They get more matches against each other. The youngsters are particularly liking it because you get a lot more juice games. Now, they're the exciting games. When you actually use this format, every second point's a game point. So you're getting a lot of juice games, and they're finding it a lot more exciting. It's much faster paced. The game score ticks over so much more quickly. So they're finding it more interesting, more exciting. So yeah, the feedback has been excellent. And yeah, I'm building a case to go back to the ITF to try and get this format accepted for official trialling. So it's been very encouraging. The number of people that have also come back to me and said, yeah, we've been using this for years. This is nothing new. And I said, yeah, you're right. But what I've now done, I've formalised it as a competitive format and branded it 30-30. If everything needs branded, 30-30, I would like to think in the future is, oh yeah, that's the shorter format of tennis, where every game starts at 30-30, 30-all. So no, it's been very encouraging, basically, Karen.
Okay, so if someone's interested in 30-30 and they want to try it out for a club tournament or perhaps a juniors tournament, what do they need to do? I mean, do they contact you? Do they just read the rules and say, hey, we're going to give this a shot? How does that work?
Well, that's the beauty of this format. It's very, very simple. The transition from traditional to 30-30 is seamless, basically. You can teach a couple of kids within 5 minutes the basic rules, and away you go. It's so similar to traditional tennis. Just every game starts at 30-all. So it's very simple. And yeah, what I'm looking for via the website, you can get my contact details and so on. And all I'm looking for is, yeah, organise a tournament or an event and so on. And then send me some basic feedback. How did the players like it? How did it go? Did you play an event out in half a day, or did you have a 2-day event? You know, did the best players still win? I want this format still to provide a decent test of skill and ability, where it's not, the best player should always win on a fair test of skill. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Be the website. It's 3030tennis.com. And yeah, the details are there, my contact details. And yeah, just to send me any feedback, good or bad, or any improvement. But it's very, very simple. You can have much shorter events rather than an event lasting all week or so on, or all weekend. You can do it in a morning or in a day, or whatever sort of style. It's up to you. Just if you organised any sort of events, the format's worth giving a try. There is nothing to lose. It's not costing you anything. If you're using Fast Forward just now, why not give this format a try, just as an alternative? See what you think. If you're using the TieBreakTens format, why not just give this format a go? It's so simple, basically, and
Right.
no need for any extra admin or timing or anything. It's simple.
Okay, so it sounds like really there's not a lot to do in order to test this out in a trial format. So that's great. And I like the statement of may the best man or woman win. Hopefully that remains the case. But also, as we've seen this year, that best man or woman could come from almost anywhere. And I love the fact that we've had so many new people rise up this year and have some breakthroughs. So in some ways, COVID has really opened up opportunity for a number of players that might not otherwise have it. So in wrapping up, definitely the less wear and tear is so important. Rafael Nadal has said tennis is a great sport. Not the way we play it, though, in terms of impact on the body. This week, I read a post concerning the Wimbledon draw, calling Roger Federer the dark horse. And I'm not here to comment on that. He also talked about speculation about not making a silly decision after his Hala match, and I have to believe across the board, if we have the ability to have less wear and tear in the body while still having great competitive matches, interesting competitive matches, the longevity of players, the ability for different players, as you said, who might excel more in that sprint type of tennis versus the marathon, could be a good thing. And then as we have shorter matches, would it also potentially be able to open up a wider draw? Perhaps draws that are currently only at 64 players could in fact increase to 128, because in the same number of days you could play a lot more matches, and then again opening up opportunities for players outside that top tier who now could either have qualifying opportunities, wild card opportunities, or just main draw opportunities because the player count is extended. And if anything in 2020 has showed us, or 2020 and now 2021, excuse me, is there is great talent in the lower ranks just waiting for an opportunity. So short format tennis could indeed make that a reality. So maybe share with me, Mark, some of your favorite moments from the past year or two, just in the standard tennis format, but in fact in players that you've seen rise up that you have found interesting or exciting. Are there any standouts for you?
Yeah, there's certainly an ongoing change of the guard. We've seen the older guys just beginning to just fall away a bit now, and there are a lot more younger, in their early 20s, more exciting players. They're struggling to break through totally just now because, yeah, the physicality of the matches required is just tough to break into. If there was shorter formats, these guys would be coming to the top a lot sooner, I believe, basically. So, no, I think tennis, I'm speaking about men, but the women's also been fantastic. There's been such a variety of different players winning. That always produces a good story. I can't remember the girl's name that just won the French Open the other week. She came from nowhere and won it. I think that's a fantastic story for sport. You need a wee bit more unpredictability. If you get the same winners and a very small closed group of people that are winning the main events, that's not the best for tennis, to be honest. You need as many tennis superstars out there as possible. And yeah, seeing them play shorter formats, I think, give the younger players more opportunity because they haven't physically developed enough to become the winners of the big long events sort of style. So no, I think tennis is in a good place. I like to see the younger, I like to see the new faces appearing and so on. I don't particularly have any favourites. Obviously, Nick Kyrgios gets a lot of press. I think he's fantastic for the game. I know a lot of people don't like him, but you need tennis to be spoken about. The youngsters need to see these guys' pictures in papers or online and so on, whether it's controversial or not. That gets tennis in the news, and it needs more of that. And yeah, I'm convinced shorter events, shorter formats can bring that. It'll open up the doors for a lot of younger players to become potential superstars. So yeah. No,
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. You have a lot to say, but unfortunately, we're running out of time today. So I think as we look at short format tennis, there's definitely a place for it if you want to look at, as we call in software, features and benefits. There probably does need to be some decisions about uniformity, and I do believe a lot of these formats have been in a test phase, and so maybe it's getting closer to where some decisions about uniformity, especially at the professional level, make sense. And, you know, in our discussion, I mentioned this to you. How many Wimbledons might Rafa Nadal have won if his body hadn't been through the meat grinder of the entire clay season prior to landing on grass? You know, we've seen him pull out of Queens a number of times and even Wimbledon. And, you know, that's unfortunate for him. It's unfortunate for fans. You know, how many Australian Opens would Novak potentially have? Or again, maybe French Opens? Because in particular, that clay season is truly a marathon. As you said, we've got, for the guys, we've got Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Madrid, Rome, and then finally the French Open. And we know it's the surface that's a real challenge. So in terms of even the way that the seasons are in tennis and the spacing between surfaces, perhaps, for lack of a better word, a rest or a retraining period in between surface switches could be also an important change. So I would love to see some more uniformity. And then ultimately, let the players and the fans decide. It's their sport. And now that the Pro Tennis Players Association is more formalized, as we've seen this week, and in fact, it does now include both men and women per recent statements, perhaps that is something for their later to-do list. You know, I believe they've got more important things to weigh in on right now. But in the end, whatever is going to be best for players, best for fans, and then, sure, helps to increase revenue in the sport and exposure in the sport. When you ask those three questions, is it good for fans? Is it good for players? Is it going to be profitable and will grow the sport? When those three conditions are met, you can be pretty certain that you are, in fact, making the right decision. So, Mark, I'd like to thank you for coming on today, talking about 3030 Tennis. And as you continue to roll this out in different groups, different clubs, and perhaps at the professional level, would like to hear how that's going and see what kinds of additional feedback you're hearing. And again, I thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks very much, Karen. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. That's a wrap. Take care.